right, welcome to a very special episode of Instant Speed Podcast. This is a deck tech featuring the one and only Daylon Mack and his ProQuest winning Prism list, as long as there are some, adjustments that have been made. And I know, Daylon, you are somebody who is notorious for tinkering your deck list literally to the last second. So this was one where you mentioned, okay, here's the initial list, but I don't want to show you that because this has gone through like 50,000 different changes ever since. So
Yeah.
what ProQuest was this that you won with this list?
So it was by the time this video drops, probably like 2 weeks ago from now. It was ProQuest Fat Ogre Games and Comics in Houston, and I was able to win it with Prism. That list has since then went through a ton of changes.
Yes.
Yeah, it has went through a ton of changes. I was telling you before we even started. I was like, I don't even know if I want to do this video because the deck is going through so many changes. But yeah, we'll tell you what I played and then what I changed.
Yeah, because there's definitely an evolution to this, and just kind of understanding what the meta is going through and finding the right frequency for this list. So walk us through the first iteration of this list. It is Prism, of course, Luminaris, 7 equipment pieces. So walk us through this list real quick and some of the choices you made for this particular list.
Yeah, so the first list is pretty standard. It's just Tome, Halo, Vestige. I wasn't big into Skullcap Tunic at this point. I was playing Skullcap, I just wasn't playing Tunic. And yeah, for the most part, I was just still didn't really understand how good Crown of Reflection was, and it's a good thing I didn't play any mirror matches in my ProQuest because I can see myself now like playing against a Prism mirror back then, and someone put out Crown of Reflection, and I've been like, oh, why is this guy playing Crown of Reflection? But yeah, that was just something I had to learn in my testing. But there's like a couple of ratios in there that like I ended up changing. Fate Foreseen is a card where I thought I would play it and bring it in more matchups, but I ended up cutting it from the deck. And then also I think there's like two blue Ravages and the yellow Ravages. I wasn't very keen on playing Herald of Judgment because I thought that card was pretty bad. If you want to play it against Chain, like if you end with 2 cards in hand or enough cards in hand to cast a Judgment against Chain, you probably took, I don't know, like 6 to 8 extra damage. And the assignment in that matchup is to not attack. You need to be disciplined and block. You still do play it, but for the most part, it's just going to be blocking. So I just chose to play Ravages because it's more damage, and I guess it comes in against Katsu Judgment, but like I would rather just eat them with other cards.
The one thing that I've noticed is that Herald of Judgment in this matchup, but like you mentioned, it's very attractive, and it's kind of a little bit of a misleading carrot on a stick to play it against a Chain, because you're, like you mentioned, the discipline that you need to have in order to just sit back and block and work for a fatigue in that case is very important. And though you might find a window where you're like, okay, I'm just going to eat 7 damage to attack them with a Herald of Judgment and really force them into an uncomfortable place. I mean, if they still have Husk, if they still have Grasp and Skullcap, like they're not going to really care too much about it. So that's a trap card in regards. And yeah, it's cool against Katsu, and it's fun to play it against Kano if that's the matchup, but that's not the case. And in terms of what this list looked like against the big 3, against the Mirror, Viserai, and Starvo, talk about the performance of this particular list before we get to the changes that you made. How did this list perform against the Triangle of Doom?
So actually, it performed pretty well. I have played like multiple Prism matchups before. I just didn't play any in that tournament, but like I've still like won those matchups. Halo Vestige wasn't bad, and I think both players were on Halo Vestige, so maybe obviously Crown is like, I know now that Crown is like the better card, but I just wasn't exposed in that situation, I guess, because like Crown is the better option. But I still play Halo and Tome, Halo Vestige Tome into Viserai and Starvo, and I thought that was I thought those cards were pretty much insane into the matchup. The thing that Prism's the Triangle of Doom does better than every other deck is they just see more cards. Like Prism has Tome of Divinity, Starvo sees a card every turn off Crown, and Viserai is at Sonata. So they have Become the Arcanine, so they're just seeing more cards. And when you're playing against those decks, you want to be able to do something powerful. You want to be able to see more cards and tome into tome, tome into tome, and you can cheat out like 3 ores can literally just win you the game on the spot. And
Yes.
and oftentimes it does. Like if you can cheat out 3 ores, like 2 instants and then one like blue one, then you pretty much do win on the spot. Um, and it just makes a lot of cards better. It makes like Merciful better. It makes Merciful insane actually because people are always trying to clear your ores, and when they attack Merciful, you just turn on Vestige, and then you just go off from there. It's super easy to set up. I just wanted like more power cards in those matchups, and because it's hard to keep up with Starvo when you're trying to play hand to hand, and they're drawing good, and you're just trying to draw good, but you have Tome, which can just get you to your good cards. So that's and the same in the Viscerai matchup. I just really liked it, but that deck ran very smooth at where I was at in testing at the time into those matchups.
Yeah, it's fascinating sometimes where like things that feel good at one time and then you kind of pivot off of them and eventually we come to the list that you are kind of rolling with right now. So the evolution of this Prism list has really taken a turn in terms of, you have a good idea and you pivot off of it, and then now with the new Prism list, we're running with 9 pieces of equipment because sometimes you can't decide, is it Vestige and Halo, or is it Crown and Tunic? When does the Skull Cap come in? So walk us through the brand new list you have, and with new cards like Unmovables in there, as well as Tome that left and then reappeared.
Yeah. So sorry about that. So this the changes I've made. Originally, I watched Medium Gaming ProQuest where Hayden Dale won, and there was a lot of Prism mirrors on there, and I saw he was playing Crown of Reflection, and he was abusing it. There's actually six straight Prism mirrors on that 6 hour video, and they're actually really really informative. I learned a lot from watching, and I talked to him, and we just chatted about the Prism deck. What he was doing in the certain matchups, and I realized that okay, I should be playing Crown. So I went from playing Halo to Halo Vestige, and then I took out all my tomes. I took out Halo Vestige, and I just went Crown Tunic. But I found that like into Viscerai and into Starvo, I felt like I was lacking a lot of power. Arcanite Skullcap, I mean, it's good against Viscerai, it's good against Starvo, but it's not really that good against Starvo because the two being able to block for 2 doesn't really put you at enough breakpoint blockage that you can like fully block out an open one. Like if it was for 3, then we would kind of be getting somewhere. So like the 2 block really doesn't matter, and then Tunic is just Tunic. I mean, Tunic's okay. It's nice to be able to every 3 turns be able to pitch a blue and just jam out an aura, but the whole power aspect of the deck is just lost without Vestige and Halo because Tome is just, I mean, Tome turns are just insane, especially if you set them up correctly. And even in my finals match, the reason I beat the Starbo player was, I mean, obviously this is like the wet dream, right? But like I tomed into Tome into Tome. So like
Yeah.
I mean, so I won the game on the spot. And I can see it on his face. He was like, "Oh God, I just lost." And I'm like, "Yeah, you did." Like, I played 3 ores, and then I put out a blue. So I put 4 ores in play on 1 turn. So he lost.
How
Like it
deep
was like
into the match were you at that point? Like, what was the life totals where you're coming in as 4, with 4 ores? Was it relatively early that you're playing the tome to sort of hunt for this advantage, or is it just sort of like when you're triggering the Halo? Is that when, like, as soon as you find your tome, are you just popping off with that?
so it kind of depends on like what your hand is looking like. Um, there's no set. It's hard to say because there's no set play lines in Fab. But my opponent actually in the finals started off by playing an Oaken Old Fuse with the leader ability. So I mean, 11 dominate, go again right off the bat. So I cheated out an aura at instant speed, and then he attacked me, put me to 28, which he should have definitely attacked the Ode. But I mean, maybe his plan was to just go face. So I took 12 damage pretty much turn 0 that I could do nothing about. And then I think we play like another turn cycle, and then I put 2 more auras out or whatever, and then that's when I just popped off. Like I went to 28 on turn 0, and I think I ended the game at 26
Wow.
to 0. Yeah, I cheated out like the tome and the tome and the tome on my turn because I think he just attacked an aura, and I think it was like he attacked the haze or whatever. And I'm like, okay, cool. And then I started my turn because I had an ode out, so I wanted to make sure I got the yellows in the pitch. And then I just jetted past him like it was over. And his hand didn't even have he couldn't even use the leader ability. So he stumbled. He had to attack an aura, and at that point, like it's over. Like
Yeah.
I have 4 auras out. I think I had like 2 parables, like 4 spectral shields. So like it was just far, far, far too much. But I do think it just depends on where you're at in the matchup, where you're at in life. But oftentimes I do just like straight up crack the Halo, play the tome, especially if I have a 4 cost aura in Arsenal. Like it's just so nice. The vestige, just being able to buff, like it just makes it so unfair, man. So unfair.
Yeah, when you could pitch a blue for 4 and cheat out an aura, it's just
Yeah,
such an
pitching a blue for
efficient play.
4. Yeah.
And like the tough part with Prism, I find, is that you're usually looking to spend 2 cards in order to get out one of those big those big instant speed auras to get things chugging. So when you're able to have Vestige to just pay a blue and get it out on your opponent's turn, oftentimes that's just good enough. It's better than good enough. It feels really great, to get that going. Ultimately, with this deck list right here against the Triangle of Doom, are you looking to go first all the time? How does your sideboard look? And just give some basic strategy tips in terms of how to beat the big 3.
Yeah, so you always want to go first as Prism, right? Because then you can just put 2 auras out at instant speed, and just start the game with 2 auras in play. They don't even get a chance to respond to it most of the time unless they're playing Prism. The sideboard plan is so the 2 unmovables, right? I think those are like the best sideboard cards in the game. You just bring those in against Starvo. The Sink Belows, I think you bring those in against Viscera. I don't play Skullcap into Vis. I do think you need the power from the Halo Vestige to go against that deck because that deck can rip off like insane power plays, and you really need to be able to match that, especially if you have a hand where you can only like just what Tome does. Like if your hand only has like 1 aura in it, like one like a Genesis or something, and you crack a Tome, and you can put out like a Genesis, another aura, and you just get so far ahead. You just make so much mana. You really need to have like a power play to match like their Revel in Runeblood turns or their Sonata or Scaletta turns. So yeah, I would bring in the Sinks. I play the Tome of Divinity lineup. Into the Prism Mirror. Now that's the one that's kind of different because you don't bring in any of your D reacts except Soul Shield. Obviously, Soul Shield's really nice. And then I don't go Halo Vestige into that matchup. I actually play Crown Tunic just because in the mirror match, both players are trying to like put as many auras out as possible and get ahead and win that way. Very rarely do people just go like the Herald Beatdown. If you try to play Herald Beatdown in the Prism right now, you will lose. You need to be trying to play out auras. You won't. If you're trying to go face and they're putting out auras, like you're losing the exchange. Whether you think dealing 7 is good or not, it's not. Like it's good to deal 7 when you got like 3 auras out on board. Like that's nice. But
Yeah.
like if you don't have anything on board, that game is that matchup is completely based off of who has the best board state. So don't worry about what life totals are at. Life is not an indicator of who's winning.
Right.
It's literally the board state in that matchup.
That matchup, I found. I mean, you and I jammed a lot of mirrors with this matchup over here, and I found it's oftentimes a chess match where you're passing priority with an action point to kind of pin your opponent, your Prism opponent, from playing an aura at instant speed on their turn. So it's so awkward because you're kind of. The fact that both players are playing a similar style of trying to cheat out auras, it just kind of reverts the state of the game back to standard rule sets where you're only playing cards on your turn. Because any experienced Prism player in the mirror will never let their opponent play their big their Genesis or their Merciful Retribution or something like that on your turn. You're gonna basically pin them down with an action point and passing priority before the arsenal and drop, and they're just kind of screwed there. But This is your newest list. I know that ProQuest season is still underway, and I'm sure that before we get to Indianapolis, I don't know what you're playing at Indy, if it's still going to be Prism, but is this sort of, this is probably going to go through some more iterations. I know that I'm going to get, fresh versions of this from you daily, but at the moment now, how confident are you with this list against the field?
I'm very confident with this list against the field. The Visceral matchup is tough, but I was playing Skullcap Tunic into it, and just trying to block them out, which is, I mean, that's just not what Prism wants to do, and it doesn't do it well. So I think just going back to like the aura plan, heavy aura, spam with tome is just stronger into every matchup really, except like the mirror match, you kind of need to do like switch up a little bit. Even in the Katsu, I go Halo tome. I think it's just no deck can really handle the aura spam. And I think if you just get far ahead, like using that plan, it's insane. Like Crown is only good. It doesn't come in any other matchup. Like it only comes in the mirror, and it's only because you're able to cheat out a zero cost aura at instant speed, and that's it. Like that's the only reason, and that's very strong. That's very strong to be able to cheat out an aura at a zero cost aura at instant speed. But yeah, I really like the Halo Vestige tone. I think it plays very well into Triangle of Doom, and then every other deck. If you're not the Triangle of Doom, I'm not really particularly worried about your deck.
I'm not giving you the time of day. I feel you.
Yeah.
I think the only deck that really, opened my eyes to a glaring weakness is the fact that like a dash list that can just, crap out action points like crazy can be problematic in terms of just vacuuming all of your auras in one turn. However, ultimately, I mean, I think that this list, like you mentioned, it takes some finesse. It definitely takes a lot of practice, but it is it is capable. And like you mentioned, Prism won you a ProQuest, and it is one of the corners within that Triangle of Doom. So thank you very much, Mr. Daylon Mack, for helping us with this deck tech, and I wish you a lot of luck moving forward, buddy. And I'm looking forward to seeing how, at the moment that this video is published, this list has probably already changed 80 times. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's going to happen, brother. Well, thank you so much again for being on the show, my man.
Thank you.
No worries. All right, friends, that is it. Daylon Mack's Prism deck tech. We'll see you next time on Instant Speed.